What do you mean Olivia will own the company? My voice remained steady, but my hands clenched into fists beneath the table. The chandelier cast a warm glow across our anniversary dinner, but I felt a chill run through the air, freezing everything around us. My father, Joseph Hamilton, the man whose company I had rescued from financial collapse, barely glanced up from his plate as he methodically cut into his steak. The restaurant buzzed with ambient conversation, making our table feel like an island of tension. Ava, let's be realistic, he sighed with that condescending tone he'd perfected over years. You're brilliant with technical things, absolutely brilliant. But leadership? He waved his knife dismissively. That's not where you shine. We need someone with presence, someone who commands respect. Your sister is clearly the best choice. Across from me, Olivia sat in her designer dress, sipping her wine with that knowing smile I'd grown to detest. She hadn't contributed a single idea when Hamilton Technologies was drowning in debt, but now that my AI system had transformed the company into a profit machine, she was being handed everything I'd worked for. I developed the algorithm that saved this company, I said, my voice cutting through the clinking silverware. Without my work, you wouldn't even have a business to pass down. Dad chuckled as if I'd told a mildly amusing joke. Then he reached into his pocket, pulled out his wallet, and tossed a crumpled bill onto the table among the receipts. For your effort. I stared at the $50 bill lying between my untouched wine glass and the plate of food I could no longer stomach. $50. For 3 years of sleepless nights, coding until my vision blurred. For the weeks I spent analyzing financial data, designing a system that pulled us from bankruptcy to industry leadership. $50 for the innovation that transformed Hamilton Technologies from a failing relic into a $300 million powerhouse. Mom shifted uncomfortably in her seat, glancing at me with apologetic eyes, but remained silent. The entire table fell quiet except for the sound of Olivia's manicured nails tapping against her wine glass. I looked at my father, the man I had spent my life trying to impress, and suddenly understood the truth. It was never about merit or innovation. It was about control. I see, I said quietly. I picked up the $50 bill, examined it for a moment, then deliberately folded it into my napkin. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. Ava, don't be so dramatic, Dad scoffed, waving his hand dismissively. I smiled without warmth. I'm not being dramatic. I'm simply excusing myself. Clearly, my role in this family is nothing more than a background character, so I'll remove myself from the scene. Olivia let out a soft, victorious chuckle as she took another sip of wine. Ava. Mom began, but I was already walking away, my heels clicking rhythmically against the marble floor. I didn't slam doors. I didn't scream about fairness. I simply left, my mind already calculating my next move. The next morning, I arrived at work early as usual. Our offices had transformed over the past year. Just 12 months ago, the atmosphere had been suffocating, employees exchanging worried whispers about layoffs, department heads jumping ship before the company sank. Now it thrived. My AI system had revolutionized the tech industry, automating processes that once took weeks into seconds. We'd expanded globally, partnering with Fortune 500 clients. But today felt different. As I crossed the lobby, I caught nervous glances between employees. Conversations died as I passed. I reached my office to find the door already open. Inside, my desk had been cleared, my computer removed, and the nameplate that once read Ava Hamilton, Technology Director, was gone. Olivia sat in my chair, casually flipping through documents. She looked up with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. Oh, good morning, Ava. Didn't Dad tell you? I'm taking over this office. You'll be reporting to me now. My stomach twisted into a tight knot, but I kept my expression neutral. What's my position? My voice remained steady despite the anger churning inside me. Olivia tilted her head in mock consideration before shrugging. We'll figure something out. Maybe something in IT support. IT support? In my own company? The company my algorithm had rescued from bankruptcy. She smirked, examining her manicured nails. Dad actually suggested you take some time off. Relax, work on some hobby coding or whatever it is you do. Don't worry though, we'll find some capacity for you to stay involved. I took a measured breath as my pulse pounded in my ears. They wanted me gone. After everything I'd sacrificed, the sleepless nights, the innovative solutions, the 3 years of relentless work, they were discarding me like yesterday's technology. Like I was worth just $50. I stared at my sister, then at the Hamilton Technologies logo etched on the glass walls. A name that once represented innovation, family legacy, and my future. Now it symbolized only betrayal. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I simply nodded. Understood. Then I turned and walked away. They thought they'd won. They believed I would disappear quietly into some technical corner. They had no idea what was coming. I walked out with my head high, my mind clear. They thought they had buried me in that back office. They expected me to accept whatever scraps they tossed my way, perhaps even beg to stay. But as the elevator doors closed behind me, a single thought burned in my mind: watch me. I didn't disappear, not completely. I still arrived punctually each morning, sitting at the tiny desk they'd assigned me in the building's remotest corner, surrounded by interns who had no idea who I really was. But I didn't fight back or protest. I observed. Within a week, the situation became crystal clear. Olivia was drowning. She had no concept of how to run a tech company, especially one that had scaled into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. She wasted days in pointless meetings, making critical decisions based on gut feelings rather than analytics. She dismissed experienced department heads who offered advice, replacing them with friends whose primary qualifications were social connections and fashion sense. The company wasn't just vulnerable, it was racing toward collapse again. Everything I had built, they were systematically destroying. That's when I made my decision. If Hamilton Technologies didn't want me, I would create something far more powerful. Late one evening, after most employees had gone home, I sat in a dimly lit coffee shop across from three of the most brilliant minds I'd ever worked with: Marcus, our former CFO who had balanced the books when we were drowning in red ink and knew every financial strategy imaginable; Layla, our data scientist whose customer profiling algorithms had revolutionized our approach; and Noah, my lead engineer, the only person who understood my AI architecture as intimately as I did after countless 3 a.m. coding sessions fueled by nothing but coffee and determination. All three had quietly resigned within the past month. They weren't fools, they'd recognized the impending disaster. Ava, Marcus leaned forward, his eyes intense. What's your plan here? I studied their faces, then pulled out a sleek black folder. Inside was everything I'd been developing in secret. We're building something revolutionary, I said, feeling my pulse quicken with excitement. I didn't need to persuade them. The gleam in their eyes told me they were already committed. There was one critical detail Olivia and my father had overlooked. The AI system, yes, it operated under Hamilton Technologies' name. Yes, they technically owned those rights. But I had written the foundational algorithms long before implementing them at the company. And the newest version with the breakthrough features. I'd never uploaded it to their servers. It remained exclusively mine. For the next month, I worked relentlessly, enhancing the system, making it more powerful, more intuitive. Then I pitched it, not to Hamilton Technologies, but directly to their competitors. Within 3 weeks, I had multiple offers. By month's end, I secured a deal, a $50 million contract. Just like that, I wasn't merely competing with Hamilton Technologies. I was positioning myself to dismantle them completely. The first warning sign for my father's company appeared subtly. A client who had been loyal to Hamilton Technologies for over a decade suddenly terminated its contract. Then another followed. And another. Olivia panicked. She began demanding explanations, firing employees indiscriminately, blaming everyone except herself. But the reality was straightforward: the industry had evolved. The next generation AI system, the one I had perfected, was now powering their competitors' operations. Hamilton Technologies had become obsolete overnight. And I was just beginning. The culmination arrived 6 months later. I sat in an elegant hotel ballroom, champagne glass in hand, as the keynote speaker concluded their presentation. This was the Tech Innovators Gala, the industry's premier annual event, attended by every significant CEO, investor, and executive. This year, I was the guest of honor. When they announced my name, I rose and walked confidently to the stage, my heels clicking rhythmically against the polished floor. Tonight, we celebrate the visionaries transforming our industry, the host announced. Ava Hamilton, creator of the most groundbreaking AI system on the market, has revolutionized how global corporations operate. Her company, Aurora Systems, is now valued at over $500 million. The applause thundered through the room, but as I surveyed the audience, my eyes found two familiar faces, my father and Olivia, seated discreetly in the back. Their company teetered on bankruptcy's edge, and their expressions confirmed they knew it. I smiled, not from vindictiveness or revenge, but because I'd finally internalized the lesson they'd inadvertently taught me. I didn't require their validation. I had succeeded entirely on my own terms. And this time, there was absolutely nothing they could do to stop me. Exactly 1 year had passed since that humiliating dinner, 1 year since my father tossed that crumpled $50 bill across the table and declared I wasn't leadership material. 1 year since Olivia's smug smile as she received everything she'd never earned. 1 year since I walked away without protest, only to ultimately win the war. Now, sitting at the head of Aurora Systems conference table reviewing our quarterly report, I couldn't help but feel a surge of satisfaction. Revenue, $320 million. Market share, 48% and climbing steadily upward. Hamilton Technologies. They were hemorrhaging money. I had methodically dismantled every competitive advantage they once possessed. Their clients had abandoned them. Their stock value had crashed. Their latest financial report, leaked to industry analysts just last week, confirmed what everyone already knew: they stood on the precipice of total collapse. That's when the inevitable finally happened. At precisely 10 a.m., my assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ava, your father and sister are here to see you." I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. So it had come to this after all. "Send them in, Zoe." They entered like defeated specters. Olivia's designer outfit couldn't conceal the exhaustion etched across her face. My father, always so composed and self-assured, appeared suddenly older, broken. They had lost everything, and the knowledge weighed visibly on them. "Ava," my father began, his voice carefully controlled, "we need to talk." I gestured toward the chairs facing my desk. They hesitated, clearly uncomfortable being on my territory for the first time in their lives. But they sat down nonetheless. Olivia shifted anxiously, her manicured nails tapping a nervous rhythm against the armrest. She refused to meet my gaze. Dad sighed heavily. "Look, we've had our differences, but at the end of the day, we're family. Hamilton Technologies is struggling. We need your help." There it was. I let the silence stretch between us, watching them grow increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, I spoke. "And what exactly are you asking me to do?" Dad leaned forward earnestly. "We're prepared to offer you a significant leadership position. Something meaningful. I realize now that we may have underestimated your capabilities." I tilted my head. "You realize that now?" Olivia finally looked up, her expression tense. "Ava, don't be childish. We need you, okay?" I laughed, a genuine, spontaneous laugh. "You need me?" I repeated, savoring each word. "That's fascinating, because a year ago, you explicitly told me I wasn't leadership material. You said I was only good for technical things." Dad had the audacity to look frustrated. "You understand how business works. Decisions were made, but now we must move forward. If you return, we can rebuild Hamilton Technologies together." There it was again. Control. They didn't want me, they wanted to harness me. "What position are you offering?" I asked, feigning interest. Dad straightened, as if preparing to close a routine business deal. "You'd be second in command, reporting directly to Olivia." I blinked, momentarily stunned by their audacity, then burst into laughter, louder this time. Olivia's cheeks flushed crimson. "Ava, grow up. You built an algorithm, fine, but that hardly means you know how to operate a company at our caliber." I stopped laughing, the amusement vanishing from my face. I leaned forward, resting my forearms deliberately on the polished desk between us, my voice dropping to a glacial whisper. "Olivia," I said, holding her gaze, "my company is valued at $500 million. Yours is weeks away from complete financial collapse. Please explain which one of us doesn't understand how to run a successful enterprise." Silence engulfed the room. Pure, delicious silence that spoke volumes. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Ava, please." That single word, please, broke something inside me. The same man who had dismissed my contributions, belittled my abilities, and tossed money at me like I was a waitress rather than his daughter, was now begging for my help. And suddenly, I felt a profound sense of peace wash over me. "No." Olivia straightened in shock. "Excuse me?" I said no, I repeated, my voice steady and clear. "I don't need Hamilton Technologies. You needed me, and you discarded me. You made your choice, and now you'll face the consequences." Dad exhaled sharply, frustration hardening his features. "You're actually going to stand by and watch your own family fail?" "I didn't cause this failure," I replied evenly. "You destroyed this company the moment you put Olivia in charge without the necessary qualifications." Olivia pushed back from her chair violently, jumping to her feet. Her face had turned scarlet with rage. "You're nothing but bitter," she hissed. "You've always been jealous of me, haven't you?" I offered her a measured, almost pitying smile. "Jealous? Olivia, I have no reason for jealousy. I already possess everything you desperately wanted." I stood calmly, smoothing my blouse with deliberate composure. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an actual company to run." My father departed in seething silence. Olivia stormed toward the exit, but paused at the doorway, turning back with a final glare. "I hope you're satisfied with yourself, Ava." I met her gaze without flinching, perfectly serene. "Completely." She vanished without another word. As the door closed behind them, I returned to my chair, exhaled deeply, and smiled, because for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free. As the doors closed behind my father and sister, I allowed myself a moment of pure relief. They actually believed they could walk in here, offer half-hearted apologies, and expect me to eagerly return to save their crumbling company. They truly had no concept of who I had become. But despite the satisfaction of seeing them desperate, I recognized this wasn't finished. Hamilton Technologies was failing, and when a company that size collapses, it drags down employees, partners, and entire communities with it. The question lingered, should I intervene? 3 days later, the news broke everywhere. Hamilton Technologies had officially declared bankruptcy. The story dominated business publications, tech forums, and national headlines. Former tech giant Hamilton Technologies collapses overnight. Failed leadership sinks a $300 million enterprise. How family politics destroyed Hamilton's tech empire. The most vindicating part. Every single article attributed the company's previous success directly to me. Journalists clearly stated what insiders had always known: Hamilton Technologies had survived its first brush with bankruptcy solely because of my AI system, and once I departed, failure became inevitable. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting when Zoe knocked on my office door. "Ava, you'll want to see this immediately." She handed me a document still warm from the printer. I scanned the pages, my expression shifting to quiet satisfaction as I reached the final paragraph. Hamilton Technologies was entering liquidation. Everything would be sold: the headquarters, remaining intellectual property, even the Hamilton name itself. My father had grown desperate. He'd overleveraged the company, taking out high-interest loans in a last-ditch effort to save it. Now creditors were seizing everything. And I had the power to buy it all. The irony was exquisite. That evening in my downtown penthouse overlooking the city lights, I contemplated my next move. I'd invested countless hours proving my worth, exhausted myself fighting against those who had dismissed and betrayed me. Now I had undeniably won. Did I truly need to deliver the final blow? My mind returned to that pivotal night 1 year ago, my father tossing that $50 bill across the table like I was a server, not his daughter who had saved his company. Instantly, my path forward crystallized. The following morning, I made my decision. I bypassed investment firms and third-party representatives. I wanted them to know exactly who was claiming everything they had lost. I personally called the bankruptcy attorney handling Hamilton's liquidation. "I'd like to submit a direct bid for all Hamilton Technologies assets," I stated firmly, including the company name. The attorney paused. "Ms. Hamilton, do you fully comprehend what that would entail?" I smiled to myself. I understand perfectly. 1 week later, I found myself seated in the same boardroom where my father had once reigned supreme, except now I was the one holding all the power. The acquisition paperwork lay spread before me, a sleek black and gold pen resting atop the final contract. With just one signature, Hamilton Technologies would become mine. The empire my father had built and refused to let me lead was now at my fingertips. Olivia and Dad sat across from me, their faces drained of color. My father looked as though he'd aged a decade in just 7 days. Olivia couldn't even bring herself to meet my eyes. "I still can't believe you're doing this," she muttered under her breath. I raised an eyebrow. "Doing what exactly? Purchasing a bankrupt company? Acquiring a brand that's now essentially worthless?" She glared. "You know precisely what I mean." I leaned back, drumming my fingers methodically against the polished mahogany. "How ironic. A year ago, you insisted I lacked the ability to lead a company, yet now you're behaving as though I wield too much influence." Dad exhaled sharply. "Ava, just sign the damn papers." I lifted the pen, hesitated deliberately, then slid the documents back across the table toward them. Dad blinked in confusion. Olivia frowned. "What is this?" my father demanded. A counterproposal, I replied calmly. He picked up the papers and quickly scanned the first page. His eyes widened in shock. You're dissolving Hamilton Technologies. Olivia gasped. You're shutting everything down. I smiled. Precisely. My father's face darkened dangerously. Why would you possibly do that? I leaned forward, my voice steady and controlled. Because I have no need for Hamilton Technologies. I never did. But there is one thing I want. I pointed to a specific clause on the final page. Dad followed my finger, his breath catching. Olivia snatched the document and read aloud, her voice trembling. All remaining rights to the Hamilton name, patents, and intellectual property will be absorbed by Aurora Systems and permanently retired. She looked up, fury blazing in her eyes. You're not merely buying it. You're erasing it completely. I met her gaze unflinchingly. Yes. Hamilton Technologies would cease to exist. The name would never be revived. The company would never resurface. It would vanish entirely, just as they had attempted to make me disappear. Dad's jaw tightened. You're simply doing this for revenge. No, I corrected him. I'm doing this because some things deserve to be laid to rest. I reclaimed the pen. This time, I signed with confidence. Just like that, it was finished. The Hamilton era had ended, and in its place, Aurora Systems flourished without competition from my father's failed enterprise. We expanded aggressively, securing exclusive contracts that once belonged to Hamilton Technologies. Their legacy had been erased completely. Mine was only beginning to unfold. 3 months later, I received a plain envelope in my office mail, no return address, containing only a handwritten note. Ava, I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll understand. Dad. I stared at the paper for several moments, feeling the weight of what it represented, then walked to my fireplace and dropped it into the flames. As the paper curled and blackened, destroying the final vestige of Hamilton Technologies, I smiled with the quiet satisfaction of complete victory. 3 months had passed since I'd erased Hamilton Technologies from existence. 3 months since I'd signed that final document ensuring the name would never resurface. 3 months since my father and sister had walked out of that boardroom owning nothing. And now, for the first time since this journey began, I felt genuine peace. Aurora Systems was flourishing. With Hamilton Technologies gone, we'd expanded rapidly, capturing every major client that had once been my father's crowning achievement. Revenue, $500 million. Market dominance, 62%. Status, the undisputed industry leader. But the numbers weren't what fulfilled me most. What truly satisfied me was walking through our offices each morning seeing a company built entirely on merit, employees hired for their talents rather than their connections, a company I'd created without seeking my family's validation. Yet despite my desire to move forward, the past had a peculiar way of resurfacing, especially when the invitation arrived. It came in an unmarked envelope, a cream-colored card with elegant gold lettering, the Hamilton Family Annual Gala. I'd completely forgotten about it. Every year for as long as I could remember, my parents had hosted this exclusive industry event when they still wielded influence. This year, my father wasn't the host. Someone else had taken over, someone who'd purchased their mansion at bankruptcy auction. The invitation was merely a formality. Whoever organized it now surely had no knowledge of my history with the Hamiltons. My receiving it was pure coincidence, but instead of discarding it, I made my decision. I would attend, not to prove anything or exact further revenge, but to close this chapter definitively. The evening of the gala, I arrived wearing a sleek, custom-tailored black gown, stepping from my car with the quiet assurance of someone with nothing left to prove. The event remained as lavish as I remembered, crystal chandeliers, orchestral music, wealthy elites sipping champagne as though they still ruled the world. Except now, I was the most influential person in attendance, and everyone recognized it. Whispers followed me as I moved through the crowd. Is that Ava Hamilton? No, she runs Aurora Systems now. Didn't she dismantle her father's company? I paid them no attention. I wasn't there for them. I had one purpose. Then I spotted them, my father and sister. They were no longer the focal point. No longer surrounded by executives discussing million-dollar deals. They stood off to the side, mere shadows of their former selves. My father appeared diminished somehow. His once commanding presence had faded, replaced by something I'd never witnessed in him before, unmistakable regret. Olivia, meanwhile, still attempted to maintain her composure, but I noticed the fractures in her facade, her knuckles whitening around her champagne glass stem, her eyes nervously darting toward me before quickly averting. For the first time ever, the power dynamic between us had completely reversed, and they were painfully aware of it. I approached them deliberately, each click of my heels against the marble floor announcing my arrival. Olivia tensed visibly. My father turned, and for just a moment, I glimpsed something unexpected flash across his features, not anger or resentment, but pure surrender. "Ava," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I tilted my head slightly. "Dad." The silence between us felt heavy with unspoken words. Finally, he sighed. "I suppose this is where you gloat about your success." I offered a gentle smile. "No, Dad. This is where I say goodbye." Olivia blinked in confusion. "What?" "I didn't come here to rub your failures in your faces," I continued calmly. "I didn't come to inventory everything you've lost, because honestly, that's no longer my concern." I placed my untouched drink on a passing server's tray and met my father's gaze one final time. "For years, I dedicated myself to earning your approval, desperate to prove my worth." I exhaled softly. "But I've moved beyond that need." I turned to Olivia. "And I don't hate you. I never did. I simply pity you." Her expression hardened defensively. "Because unlike you," I said with quiet confidence, "I never needed to appropriate power. I created my own." Her mouth opened slightly, but she remained speechless. For once in her life, she had absolutely nothing to say. I gave them both one last look before walking away, not from anger or lingering resentment, but because I had finally claimed my freedom. I left the gala without a backward glance, without any remaining need to validate myself, because this journey was never about revenge. It was about becoming the person I was always meant to be. As I slid into my car, heading back toward a company, a legacy, and a future entirely of my own creation, I smiled with the knowledge that this wasn't my story's conclusion. It was merely its beginning.